Hello, this is Paul Chek. Welcome back to my series on the 7 A's of healing. My inspiration for this series is Gabor Mate, MD's book, When the Body Says No, Exploring the Stress-Disease Connection. As I've mentioned many times now, highly recommend it, particularly if you know that you have genetic weaknesses, you have a history of cancer, diabetes, etc. in the family, and you want to learn what it takes to prevent disease effectively, or if you have a chronic illness or a disease process in play now and you want to learn a lot about what you can do to heal quickly and effectively, I highly recommend this book. Now, as I often like to recommend, my 4 Doctors multimedia ebook has a lot of great information that goes beyond what I share in my blogs. Highly recommend it. Many great things in there for you. I've mentioned it several times, so I won't bore you with a long, drawn-out explanation. And my book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, is really a manual on how to eat, move, and be healthy, which is the foundation for healing, for health, for athletic performance, for mental performance, for sexual performance, for creativity, for living well. So it's a combination of all the things that I had to say over and over to countless patients over many years, and came to the realization, why do I want to wait till people are injured, sick, tired, and burned out to tell them these things? So I put it all into a book. So for a very few dollars, you can save yourself from having to spend potentially countless thousands of dollars and learn how to live better, exercise better, breathe better, move better, eat better, get past all the diet dogmas and scams and games out there, and really learn to individualize your health and your 4-Doctor activities for your individual needs. And the new 2nd edition carries some of the key components of the 4 Doctors we've been discussing in this series, so you can use them to set your healing plan up and take advantage of the knowledge you gain from the questionnaires and the specific chapters and the zone exercises or chi building exercises and much more. Stretching routines, exercise programs based on stress scores, and a 4-day rotation diet. A lot of very useful information. So we're finishing our series today, part 7, with affirmation, which is something that I really love, believe in, and do every day, pretty much constantly. So as I did last time, we'll start with a sort of an explanation of what the word affirmation means. To affirm means to make a positive statement. We move towards something of value. So when we're really affirming, we are generally affirming something that is of value to us, and we're making a positive statement. I affirm my faith. I affirm my spiritual practice. I affirm my values. Your life is a living affirmation, and the key thing is, are you conscious of what you're affirming, or is it unconscious? And are you actually affirming and spending money on the things that ultimately are eating away at your chance of living your dream and accomplishing your goals and objectives each day, each week, each month, each year? So I put together a process map for you to show you how you can actually put the concept of affirmation into practice real time, so it's not just a concept, an intellectual concept. So we're going to build off of some of our previous work, all of it actually, and I'll reorient you. Dr. Happiness, air element, spring, planning. Dr. Movement, fire element, summer, taking action. Dr. Diet, earth element, fall, harvesting, celebrating. Dr. Quiet, water element, winter, rest, regeneration, clarifying, intuiting, and using your intuition, and dreaming, so that when you come back, you know what you're going to write down as your plan. This also correlates to sunrise or morning, noon, afternoon becoming evening, and nighttime. In the middle, we have love, desire, positive polarity, O, potential, soul, great spirit, all that can be, all that will be, all that is. VE, volt, electron, negative, electromotive force. Our desires are to move toward something. I talked about how Dr. Happiness represents the archer, and our thoughts lead to choices, and our choices produce a tangible outcome. So the earth element represents embodiment. So you buy the car, you've embodied that idea. You buy organic food, you embody organic food. It becomes part of you. Whatever you spend money on, you're making choices on, you're voting. So when I was talking in our last session, I talked about the three qualities of the soul. Dr. Happiness is what you represent. What do you stand for? What do your beliefs and behaviors signify? What story do you tell other people? What happens if everybody in the world was to emulate you? That's what you represent. The other quality of the soul is to reflect. We reflect on the outcomes we've experienced. If we get into an argument, we're not feeling like our needs are getting met, and we find ourselves getting heated, saying things and acting in ways that might be hurtful and create separation in relationship, then we have the opportunity to reflect on that. And then abiding, which is really a state of emptying. It's a state of letting go of attachment to outcomes. It's a state where we can allow ourselves permission not to think. It can be used as meditation, but it would be what I call a no-mind meditation. So the soul basically is abiding as witness to what it represents and what it reflects on. And so these three qualities were attributed to the soul by the Greek philosopher Plotinus, whose teachings are beautiful and deep and worth reading, especially if you don't think Western philosophy has much to offer compared to Eastern philosophy. I love both Eastern and Western philosophy, but Plotinus is a very beautiful bridge between those two in many ways. So now with affirmation, Gabor Mate beautifully states in his section on affirmation that there's basically two key ways of affirming that are essential for healing. One is to affirm yourself, the self, I as an individual. You are, as an I, are a point of consciousness in the universal mind or the divine mind or in life itself. And then he refers to the universe, and I will talk more about these as we go, but here I'm using a Jungian concept, the self with a capital S, which in short means to affirm everything that supports, that allows your self to exist. And as I finish, I'll loop back to that. Let's start with our self, our individual self, our I-ness. So what is your dream? What is your dream for your life? What is your dream for any healing that needs to be done? Remember, I talked about the Grand Canyon test, so you state dreams affirmatively. What is your dream for your day, your week, your month, your year? Remember, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. So having a dream means you are putting potential in tension. You're taking something that's everywhere and nowhere at once and activating the laws of the universe, which are symbolized in the Tai Chi symbol. You're putting it into tension. That's what causes spirit to flow. Basically, everything in the created universe is energy and information. And when energy flows in a direction, you have spirit. Spirit is potential downloading itself into action or into perception and into realization as a tangible experience. And there is a perpetual transformation process, because every act of creativity inspires some kind of change and gives us some opportunity to learn, to live, to love, and to grow. So our first affirmation is to clearly state our dream and affirm it, as I've shared earlier, out loud, and really get behind that. Eat, sleep, breathe. I like to say shit it, literally, because what you're pooping out is what you put in, right? So what comes out reflects what went in. Our dream, as I teach in my 4 Doctors multimedia ebook and in the new version of How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, needs to be supported by values. Our values are an affirmation, and Gabor Mate makes reference to values in this regard multiple times. Our values are our codes of conduct about what is happy making for us, what are we willing to do, when are we going to do it. Our values about movement. What are we going to do to keep ourselves healthy and fit? And how much movement and what type of movement is based on your dream. So how you move your body, how you move your emotions, and how you move or use your mind all represents an affirmation of your dream. When we have our dream and our values, we move into process each day. From the moment we wake up till we're in deep dreamless sleep, we are in process. And even when we're in deep dreamless sleep, we're in a process. It's just not conscious. Because there's a process going on, part of our values, what's deeper than values and seldom stated in a variety of modern self-help spiritual teachings, is the importance of our instincts. Our instincts are woven into the very structure of our nervous system, and it goes even beyond the nervous system right down to every single cell. And even beyond the cell, because as Bruce Lipton showed, you can take the nucleus out of the cell and it will still move toward what it wants, and it'll still move away from threats. It can still survive, but it's not a complete cell when the nucleus is gone. So I'm showing you that instincts actually go deeper than the cell. You could say they're contained in the membrane of the cell. Membrane, okay? So what are the instincts I'm talking about? Well, the instinct to breathe, something as simple as that. You'd think people would have that pretty much wired, but because of fear, anxiety, self-judgment, trauma, and a variety of other things, exercise habits such as doing too much abdominal exercise and not enough abdominal stretching or extension conditioning can all disrupt our breathing. If we're ruminating on our problems all the time and focusing on what we don't want, which is one of the prime causes of addiction, we can get so caught up in our own secret story that we stop breathing or we start hyperventilating, etc. So our first instinct is breathing. The average person breathes about 25,900 times a day. So it's quite important to us. And by the way, that's how long it takes us to make one lap, our solar system to make one lap around the Milky Way galaxy. And that is the long count of the Mayan calendar, 25,900 years. So as I'll show you later, we are the universe. Aside from breathing, we have the instinct to poop. And a huge percentage of the population isn't listening to their body, and isn't paying attention to what's going in their body, and so they end up having constipation, diarrhea, all sorts of bowel problems. We have to listen to our instinct to urinate, and unfortunately, many people shut that down in order to stay engaged in things like computers and media and games and whatever it might be. And unfortunately, a lot of us get taught in school to repress that instinct. But anytime you're repressing an instinct, you're creating problems. Whatever you repress, you compress, and eventually something's got to blow. So we have breathing, we have movement, we have the need to defecate, we have the need to urinate, we have the need to feed ourselves when our stomach is hungry. If we have good instincts, then we naturally gravitate towards foods that are health affirmative and dream affirmative, or we're working against ourselves, which I will talk about briefly in a minute. We have other instincts. We have the instinct for warmth, which is shelter and to stay warm, which is important, and that really goes all the way back to loving. When we are feeling loved, we feel warm inside. When we're not feeling love, we often feel somebody's being cold to us. So love is a source of warmth that's as important as the warmth from a heater or the warmth of being within a shelter. Two instincts that aren't talked about very much but are real is the instinct to love, which means to connect, to be part of something bigger, which is inherent in our sense of feeling safe. And another instinct that very few people talk about, although Carl Jung spoke about it under instincts, and Amit Goswami speaks a lot, has a whole book on it, which is our instinct for creativity. We are highly creative people, and if we're not creating what we want, it's fairly safe to say we're probably creating what we don't want unless we're consciously doing something as a means to getting to the next point in the destination of our stated journey or our dream. Now, if you look at the spiritual teachings of Matt Kahn, which are very, very good, he explains how complaining is actually a repressed urge for creativity, or it is the beginning of the urge for creativity, you might say. So when we're complaining, oh, this restaurant's dirty, well, what we're really saying is maybe we can make some suggestions. Or if we have enough time on our hands, we can grab a broom and help out. You're complaining because you don't like the traffic. So maybe it's a chance for you to be more creative about using the technology such as Waze, finding other ways, or working to change your hours so you can more effectively travel at low traffic times. The key point, as Matt Kahn describes it, is our complaining is really an invitation to creativity. And if you look at how much complaining goes on in the world relative to how much creativity, I'd say that we can improve collectively in that regard. So our instincts really allow us to meet our core needs. Our values are very, very important because they're how we distinguish when to say yes and when to say no. But instincts are even deeper than values. If you don't have love and you don't have breath and you don't have food and you don't have shelter and you don't have the ability to defecate or urinate effectively for any reason, then you're in a crisis, and then values start to become secondary because you go into survival mode. And when people are in survival mode, they tend to reach for things that medicate their pain, and that is the door to a lot of addictions, unfortunately. So what I'm really saying is that dreams and values are critical, but we also have to be aware that if our dream and our values aren't supporting our instincts, then we may find ourselves in a challenge that I'll talk about over here. So we have our dream, we have our values, we nourish our instincts, we honor them. We're in the process every day of making steps, bite-sized chunks. Lao Tzu says, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. So we must affirm that we are the dream, that we are the dream in a birthing process each day. I think I might have mentioned this before, but for example, I've had people that are training for a marathon, but they don't consider themselves an athlete or a marathoner till after they've run the marathon. And I have to remind them, if you're training for a marathoner, that you have to eat, sleep, breathe, and live like an athlete every day. You don't wait till you run the marathon to become a marathoner, or you probably won't do very well. So we have a chance to affirm ourselves and visualize ourselves as the dream, see our completed self, see our healthier self, our slimmer self, our fitter self, our stronger self, our happier self, whatever it may be. But we have enough science now showing us how the mind works to realize that whatever we believe and conceive, we will manifest. And if we're not paying attention to our unconscious, we might be frustrated because we keep thinking, oh, I've had this dream and it seems like nothing's working out. But remember, if it's showing up in your life and you don't think that you wanted it, look carefully at what you're choosing unconsciously. So we have our dream, our values, and our instincts that guides us through our process, and any process is going to produce some kind of an outcome. You go to the gym, you go through the process of exercising, there's an outcome, hopefully favorable. If your outcome is to gain strength and your program is designed correctly, you will get progressively stronger. If it's to build endurance, you'll get progressively better endurance. Now, when we have outcomes always give us an opportunity for awareness. Are you getting stronger? If you're trying to gain muscle mass, are you getting bigger? I.e. putting on more muscle, not fat. You can get bigger more than one way. If the awareness is favorable, then we're in a positive growth spiral. In other words, we're stepping towards the full realization and actualization of our dream, one loop of the spiral, and you could say each of these is like steps in the journey. If we're not aware, or we're not participating, or our dream isn't authentic, we have not really been honest with ourselves, or maybe our dream is just to show off to people, I'll be a millionaire in a year, but last year I only made 15 grand. Those types of things, then our dream may not be well qualified, so we can end up coming to an awareness that our outcomes aren't what we would like them to be, and that gives us a chance to really refine our process. Remember, it took Thomas Edison 10,000 tries or scientific experiments to produce a light bulb. And when he was interviewed and people asked him, how in the world is it that you managed to make that many attempts without giving up? He said, well, every time I had a failure, I knew I was one step closer to completion, so I kept going until I had completion. So it's really a reorientation of mindset. What we often call failure, if you're in process, is actually the process of development. Remember, our dream is our thesis, but inevitably in our journey, we come face to face with an antithesis. You say you're going to do this, and you find out the resources aren't available, or the finances isn't available, or somebody whose support you really needed isn't willing to give you the support. That's the antithesis, which is an inherent part of the hero's journey. If there was no challenges involved, it would be too easy, and we'd all be bored, and we'd have to come up with a better game. But there is no better game than the one you're in. That's why you're in it. It's called life. So when we're going through our process, our thesis is where we put the rubber to the road and test the metal. And if we're not getting the results we are wanting, then we have some kind of an antithesis, which also stimulates awareness and the opportunity to come back down here and take a rest, get some relaxation, get some clarity. Whenever we run into challenges, it can shake us up a little bit. So if you can imagine, the Buddhists talk about how if you take some mud and put it in water and shake it in a jar, if you get too agitated and too emotional about it and yakety yak and complain and drug and give up, then you just keep shaking the jar. But when you get down here to abiding, emptying the bone, and just being with it, and giving space for digesting your process, and allowing yourself time to rest and restore your health, and relax your mind and your body and give yourself permission to not have to do, then when the mind stops, the door of intuition opens and the whole universe begins to respond to you in very, very beautiful ways. And by resting and abiding, we let the jar sit and the dust and the dirt goes to the bottom, and all of a sudden we can see through the water again. So if we don't take time to abide, to calm down, to slow down, to rest, and to give ourselves permission to quit thinking about things and just go into an open, receptive mode, thanking Great Spirit for the guidance that you need, and just sitting, relaxing, laying down, sitting in a sauna like I do, going for a walk, not talking to people, not distracting yourself, just being present with yourself and being present with all that is, one big open invitation to just breathe and celebrate life. When we do that, we gain clarity and the universe supports us. And I know it does because I've lived it countless times. If we have outcomes that are not favorable and we are not paying attention, then we will repeat those beliefs and those behaviors, ignore our instincts, and we will not reflect properly. We won't use our intuition, and we spiral down into a dream negative cycle. This is a generative cycle. This is a degenerative cycle. And here's where we're highly susceptible to addiction. My definition of an addiction is any repeated behavior that does not produce the result you want. So if we look at our diets, we look at our sleeping patterns, our exercise patterns, we look at the things that are important to us, we look at our relationship with our instincts, we ask ourselves, do we have a clearly stated dream, and do we have well thought out goals to get there? And the goals can be modified. Part of it's just, remember, thought, word, deed. What is your dream? Say it, write it, and get on it. So that doesn't mean it's like a statement that you're making in blood and God's going to hold you prisoner if you don't do it. It means that's our highest intention. And just like a business plan has to be modified as the environment change or competition changes or technology change, our dream and our plan can change as necessary, because when we run into an antithesis, which is a growth opportunity, we have to survey the environment, survey with ourselves, look at our resources, talk to our support team or the people that are co-creating with us, and revision may be necessary. When we aren't using awareness effectively in all the things I'm saying, then the pain teacher often shows up. Most diseases, as I've said, take many years, 5, 10, 15 years to create, especially something like cancer. This means that we haven't been listening to our instincts or paying attention and having awareness for usually quite a long time. Now, there's also other issues such as chemical toxicity and environmental factors. So I'm speaking in broad stroke terms because this is mostly what's going on with regard to illness and disease. So the pain teacher shows up. And sometimes the pain teacher shows up not because we haven't been paying attention, not because we haven't been listening, not because we don't love ourselves. I've known many people to get very serious diseases and it made no sense whatsoever. But from a spiritual perspective, sometimes our soul brings us into a disease state so that we can grow to a higher level. Maybe we were physically fit, but we had an opportunity for emotional growth or mental growth or spiritual growth. Or maybe we don't realize that it is our calling to go through a disease process, learn about it, and figure out new and interesting ways of healing. And it is our legacy to share that journey with us. So sometimes we have health challenges not because we're necessarily out of balance or doing anything wrong, but because spiritually we came here to take on a challenge so that we can help the rest of ourselves learn how to process that challenge when it comes. And almost all of my injuries has been great teachers that have ultimately helped countless thousands of people. The pain teacher invites reflection, and when we reflect, then we can decide what we want to represent or represent. In alchemy, they call this the blackening phase, but we go into calcination, where you're thrown into the fires of your own depression or your own anxiety. And the alchemists encourage us to sit with it and really experience and be honest about what we're experiencing, and to get clear on what is not serving our highest good, our health, our well-being, our relationships, our dream. And then we use a process called separation, and we say, okay, that's not something I want anymore. All that coffee drinking and late nights and complaining that I don't have time to exercise isn't working. So that's the alchemical process of separation. And we go through this process without going through the whole alchemical system, but we go through this process very frequently without even knowing we're doing it, or we have an invitation to do it, and if we don't do it, well, then we're choosing not to choose, which is a very, very powerful choice. So that's the cycle of affirmation. We dream, we clarify our values, we honor our instincts, we engage the process of producing and living our dream. We get outcomes which bring us into awareness, and the awareness says, good job, you're moving in the right direction, or you need to retool, you've run into a challenge, surprise, a learning opportunity, or we whine, bitch, and complain and don't realize we have an opportunity to be creative. Poor me, mommy didn't, daddy didn't, the world didn't, the government didn't, ... We fall down into the depths of our own darkness, enhancing our shadow. We risk becoming addicted. We meet the pain teacher. We get invitations for reflection, which are best not drugged. And we have an opportunity to represent ourselves. And when we do this and our outcomes are followed by adequate rest and we let the dust settle, that's called living. That's called living well. That doesn't mean life's going to be perfect all the time. Doesn't mean you'll always have money in the bank. Doesn't mean that your relationships are going to be smooth and easy. Great Spirit loves all this. This is how Great Spirit evolves itself. When you evolve, the universe evolves. If the universe evolves, then God's evolving. Some people have a hard time with that concept, but a lot of people find thinking too hard to really engage in, so they just rearrange their prejudices. And unfortunately, that's most of what we call religion today. It's not really based on deep affirmation or worship or awareness. It's really just regurgitating what somebody else said or what they read out of a book and believing that it's true even when it's causing a lot of pain. So we want to have a spiritual life, which means to be connected to something greater than ourselves, which brings us to our closing point. Gabor Mate suggests that we affirm ourselves, and then we affirm ourselves as part of the universe. Capital SELF in Jungian psychology means that which we're connected to. Every plant in a garden is connected to the earth in the garden. It's connected to the water in the garden. It's connected to the sunshine. It's connected to the moon. It's connected to the air. So there's examples of the self. The plant cannot grow without earth, water, fire, air, space, warmth, ... As a human being, we are connected to a family, a gene line. We're connected often to a community or to a society or a culture, and we're all connected to the world. So affirming the capital SELF is realizing that you're part of something much bigger than your individual I, but your individual I is an inherent component of we and all. And you get right down to it, and if you spend enough time meditating on this, you'll realize that what we typically think of ourselves as, here I am, Paul Chek, here's my hands, my head, well, that's earth. That's water. My fire, the metabolism in my body, represents the warmth of the sun. It's called the ganglia that controls digestion and elimination largely is called the solar plexus, the sun plexus. It takes photosynthesis, food that's been converted from sunlight into food, and then we convert it from food into body and energy or chi or life force. So one thing just becomes the other thing. So we are the earth, we are the water, we are, our whole body's about, 55 to 72% water, depending on how old and how healthy you are. We are the air. Like I said, we have to breathe 25,900 times a day, and if we don't have air, we can't do that, and the fire goes out. We are space. So when you really think about it, if you say, well, get rid of the earth, get rid of the fire, get rid of the water, get rid of the air, either you're all space at that point, which means you're everywhere and nowhere at once, and if you get rid of the space, then what are you? Except pure potential. And pure potential is at the base of all things, everywhere in the universe. So if you really meditate on this, we are the universe, and the universe is the ultimate self, of which the earth is just a little tiny dot, like a little garden out in the middle of a vast, vast, vast universe. But everything in the universe is what it took to make us. We couldn't be here without the whole thing, and we couldn't have a self and an I. And there's an old saying, why do the stars shine? So we will look at them. And it is the eye of you and the eyes of you that affirm the beauty of Mother Earth and affirm the beauty of a solar system and a galaxy and a universe. And look at the magic and look at the mystery. And really, if you just take a few minutes to think about it, it's a miracle. It's an absolute miracle. Every single day is a miracle. But we get too caught up in the humdrums and the mundanity of life, and we don't realize that what we affirm is what we worship. And we don't realize that we have the opportunity to worship all the people, places, and things that support us, and worship ourselves because you're here. That means that the entire universe conspired to create you to have a unique experience, and only you can give the universe the experience that you're having, because there is no other one of you and there never will be another one of you. So when you really get down to it, to affirm life, to affirm the self, and to keep yourself vital enough to really enjoy the magic and the mystery of life, is what affirmation is all about. And people who tend to affirm and worship themselves and love themselves and the earth and life are far less likely to have illnesses, disease, and painful ends to relationships, and are far more likely to be patient, to be empathetic, to be compassionate, to use challenges as opportunities to growth. And those are the kinds of people that ultimately have the power to become great leaders. And there are great teachers and great people all around us. When the student is ready, the master always appears. What I'm here to say is that the universe is the great teacher, and it is the great lover, and it is you, and you are it. The earth is here for us, and we are here for it. We are here for ourselves, and we are here for each other. And to realize that, and to celebrate that, and to live your dream and add love and beauty to the world, and to have values, remembering that every dollar you spend is the only vote that really counts, because I think all of us by this time have figured out politics is really kind of like the legal system. It's just nothing but a series of manipulations and games. But when we are aware of what we're spending our money on, we're really affirming what we want to support, and the more conscious we are, the more conscious our actions are, and the more consciousness we add to the world. So in closing, it's inherent that we run into challenges in life. It's part of our growth process. I call the earth spirit gym. We go to a gym to grow ourselves physically, but in spirit gym, through relationships and through life, we grow ourselves emotionally, mentally, and we reach deeper into the awareness of who and what we really are. And that's what spirit gym's for. And as we grow and become more conscious and more loving and more empathetic and compassionate, we have the visceral experience that we are a citizen of the universe, that we're always loved, that we're always supported, because everything that's in us is around us, and everything that's around us and above us and below us is in us. We are it. You're looking at yourself, you're looking at your life, and it is all looking back at you, and that is the beautiful closure that makes the circle. So thank you for joining me for our series, The 7 A's of Healing, where we've learned about acceptance, awareness, anger, autonomy, attachment, assertion, and today, affirmation. Thank you for joining me. I'm Chek. I look forward to sharing much more with you soon. Namaste.